Welcome to the Dixie Doggers podcast. We're here to share knowledge and heritage. We hope y'all enjoy. Southern Cross. It's the best cut gear in the business. We run it on our dogs. Hit up Dave Williams at Southern Cross Cut Gear. Go to www.hogdoggear.com. If you're looking for Brahma and Brahma Cross cattle, Marc Rankin with the Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company, he specializes in them. He is the man for the job. He's based out of Oglethorpe County, Georgia, and you can contact him at 407-832-2077.
If you're buying or selling land, farms, or hunting property, these folks know land. Phil Wilson with UC Hunting Properties, 678-791-3483.
Dixie Doggers podcast. We're right back on it one more time. Normally I say it's Nate and Joey here, but I'm here by myself. Nate's he's out doing some stuff in the world to further his career, and it's just a little week of shooting school, I believe, and he'll be back with us. But I have a guest with us today. I've got a guy I met at Uncle Earl's. I got Troy Crittle with us. He's from Australia, one of the blackmouth cur guys we were talking about. So how are you doing, Troy?
Yeah, g'day, Joey. Well, thanks, mate. It's sun's about to come up here. It's a beautiful day.
Good deal. Yeah, the time difference is more than I even thought it was. I mean, I'm glad we got to get you on here and get you fresh in the morning. That way, you're not tired and wore out from a long hard day of work. So you can do that. You can do that after we get done.
Not too bad. Yeah. So when I finish here today, we'll go and set some pig traps and set up some pig control sites for a course we got next week. Yeah, well, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just tell the listeners out there, where you're from. Introduce yourself, like we just did already. So, and then kind of, what you do. Go in. You don't have to go into a great detail, no more than you want to, or that you're able to, and just give us a rundown of who you are.
Yeah, sure, mate. I'm 52. Middle-aged dad is getting a bit too old and fat to hunt pigs, I suppose. But I've been around pest animal control and what we call natural resource management for about 28 years. So I've been doing that sort of various sort of different types of that for a while now. The job that I'm in now is called invasive species officer. So my speciality, or at the moment, I've worked on other stuff as well, but pigs, deer and rabbits, but specifically in New South Wales. So New South Wales is on the east coast of Australia. So Sydney is in New South Wales. I live in a town called Tamworth, which is about 80,000 people, and that's about 5 or 6 hours drive so north of Sydney, or about 6 or 8 hours south of Brisbane. My partner in crime, Baden. So Baden lives about 1,000 kilometres away in central Queensland. But where I am, you can sort of describe that as northwest New South Wales. It's a farming area around here, primarily mixed agriculture. So some really good cropping areas about here. Good black soil plains. There's a little bit of hilly stuff. So sheep, cattle, summer and winter crops as well. So plenty of food for pigs. But yeah, it's a big agricultural area. How did I get into this game? I suppose I just always had an interest in it. Like most guys who are into fisheries are fishermen. So, I was a hunter when I was a young guy and I wanted to do something in a related field. Moved around a bit when I was younger, as you do, to chase the work. Lived in Queensland and worked up there in the same field for 7 years. And we moved back to New South Wales the day that Michael Jackson died. I do remember that, because in the removalist truck, all we heard were bloody Michael Jackson songs for the entire day. So I think that was 2009. We've been back down here, and since I've been back down here, my job is kind of to take the information that our research team get on pig control or deer populations, and then break that into bits, and then either turn that into decent policy to get stuff done, or to train people within the industry. So if you work as a biosecurity officer, we call them in New South Wales, if you work as a biosecurity officer, then I'm the guy that does some of your training and kind of mentors you through the first couple of years. Also worked on specific projects. worked on what we call large feral herbivore control in New South Wales. So worked on camel control project in Far West and donkey control projects as well, which we don't have that many of. But primarily at the moment, it's pigs, it's feral pig stuff, and probably about 10 or 15 or 20% deer work as well. So I've been doing that for about 14 years. And I enjoy it. It's not always easy, and sometimes there is, I come across some hunters who I'm probably not their best friends, because we're sort of saying to them, saying to landholders, well, if you really want to do a great job, there's some ways to do this. And one of those is to prevent, give your hunters a break for a while, and do something else. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's not always easy, but I enjoy it. And I'm a reasonably keen hunter. Like I don't do lots anymore. Like I mainly do every Saturday, to be honest, because my boys, I've got two boys. They're 17 and 14, and they play sport, and we work around that a bit. But most Saturday mornings, you'll find me out there, climbing around some hills, behind a pack of dogs.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, like you said, you're getting what you said, 52, getting the middle age thing.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of funny because like it seemed like a lot of the guys I know, like when we were like in our real prime, late 20s, all through our 20s and into our 30s, we would hunt and we would just go as hard as we could go, and then we start slowing down. Well, then our kids, they start getting old enough that they're starting to hit their stride. And then it's like they bring us back into it. But little do they know that we're not in our prime anymore. I'll tell you, Nathan works me to death.
I'll tell you a story about that. Just the other day, some of the country I hunt's a bit too steep for a quad bike. Like it's pretty steep.
Yeah.
And the dogs had a pig up on top of a hill, and you had to climb up through a saddle. Like we know it really well. But there's a bit of a steep climb for about 400 metres, and both boys are pretty fit. They're playing football. Like my son's 6'4" and 95 kilos, and he's 17. Like he's a big guy, and he works out all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking up this hill, and I've got the tracker, so he's in front of me, and I'm like sucking in air. I can smell penguins from the South Pole. I'm sucking in air from that far away. And I see him look around, and he's looking for something to do while I catch up, and he starts doing pull-ups in a tree.
Oh no!
And I struggled my way up to him, and I just said, that is and rude, mate. I used to carry you around these hills. But it's great. No, it's awesome, mate. I love it. I love hunting with him, and we just sort of do our own thing a bit, but we have a great time.
Yeah, that's...
I think I'll probably look back on this as probably the best,
Yeah.
Probably the best hunting I've done. Yeah.
I do that quite frequently now. Like I said, Nate's gone for a few... He's been gone this week, and this past weekend, Rodney and I, we went on a hunt, and I'll be honest, like we were on the pigs. Every time that we jumped one, it was on the property line, and they went across the property. And so, and when it was all said and done, I was really glad, because I was like, you know what, we would have had to, tie all those, catch all those pigs up. We'd had to, kill them, pull them out of there, all this work. I said, I'm really glad that, and we've got dogs that we can call off, we can tone them, and they'll leave and come back to us. And that's a great thing. But I really missed having that young man there. It was like,
sure.
You don't realize how much they actually do until they're not there. You're like, wow, like he does.
You do, and it feels different as well, right?
It does. Experience. And I really think that my best days are now. Hunting with my son. I really do. Yeah, I've hunted with a lot of people, and I've met some great people, and I've made some lifelong friends. But I don't think there's anything that's better than your son or your daughter. If you're able to hunt with them like we do.
Yeah,
it's really a blessing. Yeah. So now with the with the backstory, like you said, of all the animal control and the things that you do.
Yeah.
Now are you guys able to use dogs in any of that?
No, not really.
Not really. No. Okay.
No. So the only kind of dog control work, sort of professional dog control work that you'll see in Australia, there's a little bit of dog detection work, so for fire ants and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using them for weeds as well here now. there are a couple of guys in Victoria working on sambar deer.
Yeah.
And so sambar deer are the world champion hide and seek contestants. So they're really hard to find in that really thick scrub. There's some guys using pointing dogs. In particular, there's guys that use English pointers, like you would on birds, and they use dogs for that. But for pest control, not really, no. And I certainly don't. I do have a black Labrador here that will track deer a bit, but he's mainly turned into a turner. He turns food into shit, but yeah, not so much. Yeah, we the sort of main techniques that are used in Australia, certainly in New South Wales, are sort of a little bit of trapping. Like there's a lot of trapping. We're well established with bait techniques. I teach a lot of that, and aerial shooting. And there's sort of two types of aerial shooting. There's stuff that might be paid for by the government, and that's kind of like an intervention when there might be a threatened species involved or there's a particular problem in an area. And then, there's nothing to stop private landholders engaging private aerial shooters as well. So there's a lot of it, a lot of different work going on. But what we've got in New South Wales, particularly right now, and also across Australia a bit more broadly, is really high pig populations, like the highest densities you're probably going to see anywhere. Because we've had 5 really wet years. It started raining here. We had a really bad drought on and off for 10 years. So from about 2009 to about 2019, on and off. If you remember, in 2019 we had those really bad fires just before Christmas, and then we had COVID started in sort of March, April, May 2020. Well, when COVID kind of was a thing, when we were in lockdown, it actually started raining, and we've had really good seasons since then. So we've gone from a really, really low feral pig population, like the lowest it's probably ever going to be, to very high. Like in 5 years, yeah, it's quite amazing. So in Eastern New South Wales, feral pigs are across about 3/4 of the state, and that doesn't change that much. It changes a bit. There's some new areas where pigs pop up, but by and large, if you're going to have pigs in New South Wales, you've probably got them now. But what changes is the density in there. So it can go from low to high pretty quickly, or can certainly go from a medium population to a very high quite quickly, because pigs can breed about the same as rabbits.
Yes.
Really, about the same as European rabbits. And when they get the good conditions, the young, so if females are born early in the year, they'll be having their own young before the end of the year.
Yes.
Yeah. So they'll cycle really young, so 6, 7, 8 months old, if they've got enough protein in their diet. Yeah. So really high populations at the moment, and that's, if you Google that, you'll find it. There's heaps of work being done here right across Australia at the moment, and it's actually a pretty big issue right now. Yeah. So pretty busy times for us.
Oh, I can only imagine that.
Yeah.
We have certain places like Texas and Florida. They're going to be our most densely populated areas. Those couple of states. Well, yeah, I mean, you have Louisiana, and then you'll have along the Gulf Coast. There's more pig population there than anywhere, and like where we live at, it's not very dense.
Okay.
There's some people, they like if they see 1 or 2 little spot, what I call just little spots of where pigs have rooted at. They think that they have a lot of pigs. I'm like, no, you're good. You've got maybe one small sounder, and they think it's the end of the world. And I'm like, look. So I show them some pictures and video, and once they see that the true amount of damage that several big mobs of pigs can do, it puts it into perspective. Like it can just, instead of having one little spot in your field that they messed up, they can demolish the whole field. It's so wild how much damage that they can really, really do in a short amount of time.
Sure. Yeah.
I love hunting the pigs. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can see that from the helicopter too. Fire wetlands just demolished.
I bet.
But the thing I suppose I noticed, from being there, and we hunted with Rusty, and Another guy, Alonzo, down in Texas, and had a great time. But yeah, the population is pretty low, certainly where we were. But it's just the population, mate. Like just the population of people who are hunting them. Like that's the big difference. Like New South Wales and Texas are roughly the same size, roughly. We've got 8 million people. Texas has got 30 million.
Wow.
Like there's only between 17 and 18 million people in all of Australia.
Wow. So you don't have that many hog hunters at all,
We have plenty of hog hunters, and it's a big part of our culture. If where I grew up, if you weren't into yeah. Like if you weren't into football or smoking weed, you're a pig hunter. Some guys did all three, right?
Yeah.
But it's
I know some
huge.
of those.
Like, yeah,
that are here.
That is right. No, so yeah, that's the thing that we noticed, and the hunting pressure for both for deer and pigs blew us away. Like we were amazed at that, and some of those younger guys that we hunted with, or even Rusty, like they were hunting multiple nights a week on pretty low to medium sort of pig density. So that was quite impressive. Like there's a heap of pig hunters here. Like it's a really big thing. I don't know. I think it used to be a little more low key than it is now. Like social media has changed things. One of my neighbours, if people haven't heard of him, he's called Pig Chasing Australia. He sells his own merchandise, and he's the biggest one that I know of in Australia. And he actually used to live coincidentally, just lived next door to me. I didn't know the guy until he moved in. But he actually did work experience with me when he's at university. But he's actually in the States now. He's over there for a month, but he's got a business and social media, and it's thriving, and he's doing really well. And you see his logo, everywhere you go. It's a bit like, is it Boars N Broads? What's the one that
Boars N Broads,
the big one over there? Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got his own. So like and that's everywhere, like wherever you go, you'll see pig hunting trucks and pig dogs and young fellas just really into it. So it's a big part of our culture, but we just don't have the population that you guys have got.
Now, you said something right there when you were talking about the pig hunting trucks. That's something that I find is very, very different. The setups that we use versus the setups that you guys use. The way you have, like, say, a truck or a ute, and the way you have your tray and your box and everything on there, to me, it's way more efficient. I really like that. I have a truck right now that we're building a full rig just like that, a little Toyota, and that's I've been talking about doing it for years. So finally got off our ass. That's what we're working on.
Nice.
I just never understood why more people didn't try to incorporate that. I really like the whole aspect of it, and it might be because a lot of people just have never paid attention to it. It could just be something very simple. Yep. But I think if
like a flat deck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have the flat deck, the box in the back with a windscreen on it.
Yep.
And then I'll be able to have my storage to the front, and the dogs can ride right there and just bail out whenever they need to.
We'll be back after a quick break.
A quick thanks to supporters of the Dixie Doggers podcast: Southern Cross Cut Gear, UC Hunting Properties, Rankin Ranch 38 Cattle Company, Animal Housing Solutions, Boars N Broads, Ada Y Transport, Crockett Taxidermy and Processing.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of guys do that. Here, it's sort of changed a little bit the last 20 years. So when I grew up, you just pig hunted out of whatever you had, and a lot of it were, two-wheel drive utes and stuff, like old Holden utes, or I knew guys that used to hunt out of station wagons and stuff. And of course, you couldn't get around as good as you can in a four-wheel drive, but people just made do. And then as four-wheel drives became a bit more popular, a bit more user-friendly for those sort of slightly longer trips, we do lots of driving here. So, in an old Land Cruiser or an old Hilux back in the day, it was a slow trip to get anywhere, So they become more popular. And then when there was a really strong meat market, so I grew up, selling pigs into the meat market, or what we call a chiller trade. So guys would have a flat deck, and they would have a dog cage. And if you see some old photos, there's actually pigs hanging on the outside of the dog cage on hooks.
Yeah.
So they would hang, right on the outside, and they'd be up and down. They'd be vertical with their hung by their feet, and their heads would be nearly touching the road. And then that was deemed unsafe. Sometime I don't know, sometime in the late 90s, we were prevented to do that. And then you had to hang them on the inside. So you'd have a small dog box at the front or the back, and you'd have hooks on the inside. So you'd have to pull the pig up through the inside and then put the pin through their hips, through their stomach cavity up out their butthole. Mm-hmm. And so you had to carry them like that. But since then, the meat trade's really dropped off a lot. Like there's guys who are professional kangaroo shooters who will still shoot a few pigs or a few deer, but a guy just going out with dogs, to catch a few pigs. Yeah, there's some fellas do it, and I know they do, but not as many as there was. The licensing requirements are pretty intense nowadays, and you kind of got to be catching enough to make it worthwhile. But mostly it's guys who shoot a few roos and then do a bit of pig hunting or shoot a few pigs as well, and a lot of them supplement it with deer as well now. Like there's no licensing requirements around deer on private land. You shoot as many as you want whenever you can, as long as you've got permission.
Okay.
So that's changed. But now, like you said, we're seeing sort of custom setups for boxes and racks that are kind of a bit more recreational for stuff, to store your stuff, or really good enclosed boxes, safes for rifles on the back, angle fridges, like that sort of stuff.
Yes.
But there's some pretty cool setups out there. I've got a canopy on mine with drawers and a fridge and a place for the dogs to jump up into. So cages, and then I've got a canvas canopy that zips down over the outside. If I'm traveling and it's cold, or I'm traveling when it's hot, I can zip it up. And it's a bit more secure there as well. Hopefully people are not going to steal my stuff. But yeah, there's some good setups. The vehicles, like the trucks that you guys run, generally are huge. Like that's one big surprise to us. I think sometimes a smaller, narrower vehicle can get more places.
That's what we run. We run the Toyota. I run an older Toyota as well, because it's even more narrow. But I do, like you said, most of us have bigger trucks, and I do have some bigger trucks as well. I've got flatbeds that are a 1-ton series, big diesels in them and all that. But they're so big. You probably
need to tell people about that block of wood that's holding your headlight on that we saw at Uncle Earl's.
Oh, that's on Rodney's little Toyota. Now that you can't.
Oh, is that Rodney's?
Yeah, you can't get that just anywhere, Troy. That's a custom headlight mount. And you can only get that right here at DixieDoggers.com. And
I think ARB should start selling those, mate.
Man, I have a feeling if we ever start, we won't be able to keep up production. It's gonna
that was some redneck shit.
Look, before that, I had a damn water bottle that was half full of water stuck in it, so with old headlight in. That poor truck, we have beat the shit out of that truck. Hey, we got new tires on today, I think, or yesterday.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're ready to go again.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, I'm similar. I've got we call a Hilux. I think you guys call it a Tacoma.
Yes.
And touch wood, it's got 230,000 kilometres on it. It's been around, and it's still going, and hopefully go for a few more years yet. I didn't realise that truck was Rodney's. That's maybe why we bonded so much over moonshine.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, he's my boy. Yeah.
Yeah, old hot rod.
Good stuff. We had a great time. So where were we? Deer and trucks we're talking about. Yeah.
Now talking about the having a tray to put your rifles and stuff like that. What's probably the most commonly used caliber there? That's something somebody asked me about it, and they were like, "I wonder what they shoot." I was like, "Well, I don't know. Probably." Whatever.
Yeah. So obviously, it depends what we're doing. For general spotlighting, and pest control, 223.
Yeah.
Is the most popular. I think I'd be pretty safe. 243 are really popular as well. It's probably the start of the deer rounds. 243 is really good for fallow deer. And bigger things, 308. So it's probably not that much different.
No, it's about the same, yeah.
About the same, yeah. But 223 for professional guys, nearly all 223. There's a couple of guys that have blackouts.
Yeah.
That professional guys that might be running a suppressor, which are hard to get here, but you can get them with the right licensing. Takes a while, but so 300 blackouts. But yeah, 2 to 3 is very common. For controlling traps, we recommend, and we use 22 Magnum. I think it's a bit better than a 22 long rifle.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you that bit of margin for error for pigs. But
That's right.
and then if you get into like sambar deer, like they're the biggest deer that we've got in the country. So 30-06 is popular for them. 9.3s, actually European caliber, that's quite popular as well.
Okay.
And 35 Whelan for those guys, sort of hunting recreationally. But for spotlighting deer, which you can do here, the sambar, probably 308 is probably the most popular. Most of the aerial shooting that's done in New South Wales, certainly all of the government aerial shooting is 308. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So not, I don't think it's that much different to you guys.
No, it's going to be very, very close because I think, like you said, a lot of the government stuff is done on AR platforms, I believe. So, the 308 or the 223, 556, whatever, it's all that's going to be the most common here as well. It's just a really common round, I think, just worldwide now,
it is.
The availability of it, the ammunition, it's cheap and you can find it anywhere.
Yeah.
So I that would be the reason I would say, and I mean, it's efficient. It gets the job done. Shot placement's going to be key, of course, but
sure.
it definitely gets the job done.
Yep. No, they're good round those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for people listening out there, spotlighting is illegal in the U.S. There's a lot that do it, and they think it's legal, but it is illegal.
Certainly legal in New South Wales. That's all I can really talk about. But in New South Wales, it's legal to spotlight deer on private land.
Yeah,
if you have the landholder's permission. Yep, you can do that. Thermal's legal as well.
Mm-hmm. So we have a
but
thermal.
Not on. Yep,
we have thermal season here where I live at in Alabama. Well, we've got a few months during the summer. You can do coyotes and feral pigs from like after turkey or after deer season till the start of the next deer season. You can do it at night there. So it gives.
There's a specific thermal season, yeah? Wow.
Yeah, just a season, yeah. And then they've also throttled us down to where we have a specific dog and knife season for hogs. You cannot carry a firearm at all. You can only have dogs and a knife. And that's from this week. It starts the end of this week, and it goes till, I think, September. It's pretty weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, they changed a lot of it up. Once they declared that we had pigs in every county in our state, then they started giving us rules and regulations. Before that, we didn't have any. They were like, okay, the law stated, upon capture, feral swine is reduced to domestic livestock. So once you caught it, it was your hog. You could do whatever, take it to your house, put it in your pen, do whatever.
Okay.
And then they changed it, and now we can't have a live one at all. And true enough, there's reasons why people were transporting and populating areas that didn't need to be.
Yeah, there's some really good data around across the US actually that when pig hunting was legalized, then that was when the pigs actually started to spread more.
Yeah,
which make of that what you will,
And that's a lot of it. I don't know if it's the same way where you guys are, but sometimes we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah, look, it happens here. More so nowadays with deer. I would get, probably two reports a month of deer popping up in areas where we haven't seen them before. I had one last week where a large sambar deer popped up in an area where it shouldn't be. And that's really difficult to do much about other than respond after, because you really never know where they're going to pop up. But there's deer across about 30%, give or take, of New South Wales now, up from, in 2004, 2005 was about 5% of the state had deer of some kinds present, at all sort of densities. Now it's 30. So they've spread really quickly in the 2000s. They spread a lot. And as a result of that, we don't have seasons. We have the opposite. We actually have targeted programs to go out and try and limit the spread
That
of deer. We have
that's
some of the
really
highest
interesting.
densities. Fallow deer anywhere recorded on the planet. Like I worked on a program where there were 38 fallow deer per square kilometre, and we're not aware of any, denser at high densities than that anywhere on the planet. One program I worked on removed like 13,500 fallow deer, and that's been well reported. You can find that. We didn't really have any option, Joey. Like it was drought, and landholders weren't able to, rest paddocks or even feed stock. Deer would bully livestock away, sheep and cattle away from where they're being fed, just so they could get a feed.
Well, there's a
so
lot
that
of
was
times,
really the start of it.
I'm sorry, but a lot of times people don't understand that how much damage deer can cause.
Yep.
Like here in the States, you very seldom will you ever hear of anything negative about a white-tailed deer. And they will be in a soybean field, but there's dozens and dozens of them. And, you look at how many are out there eating. But now it's it's a lucrative industry, the white-tailed deer industry here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it generates billions of dollars.
Yep.
So they're not going to say anything bad about it.
And the other thing too is that they're native. Not native to all parts of the US, I don't think, but certainly in Australia they're not native at all, and the ecosystem's just not, hasn't adapted to them, and they can create a lot of problems. But there seem to be, and this is just my opinion, and I don't have any evidence of this other than working in the industry, but it seems like there's about a bit of a 20-year barrier. Like people will tolerate deer for a while, and they go, that's cool, that's cool. I like to have a few deer about, show photos to the grandkids and that sort of stuff. And about 10 years in, it sort of feels like people go, look, there's a few deer about. We might start shooting a few more than we already done, or we might get a cool room and we'll start making sausage, or we'll start mincing some. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes, well, maybe we'll get a professional shooter in, a roo shooter, and we'll let him shoot the deer. And then it's sort of that 20-year mark. It's like, oh shit, why did we do something about these things 20 years ago? And then that's sort of when we get the phone calls, when it's kind of the horse is kind of bolted in some respects, but there's still things that we can do. The focus here is trying to limit the spread as much as we can, but in a lot of areas up and down, the Great Dividing Range in New South Wales, it's probably too late. If you've got deer, you're always going to have deer. Mm-hmm. And we've got 5 species here in New South Wales. We've got fallow deer, which is probably the most widespread, and we've got sambar deer. They're the real big ones. They're probably the next most widespread. Red deer, which are in sort of pockets up and down, and they're the sort of classical, Scottish red deer. Rooster deer, which are like a subtropical species, and chittle. We call chittle, you call axis. There's pockets of axis around as well, because they seem to be the one that's translocated a lot because they're so pretty, and people like to have them around. So there's pockets of those popping up as well. We've got another one that we're not quite sure. I don't think we have in New South Wales yet. Anyway, called hog deer, which is from Sri Lanka, and they're only a little guy, but they're in Victoria. So I don't think we have those yet. We're not quite sure.
Wow, I was kind of curious of that, but you answered that in that right there. I was just curious if people, if they wanted to hunt deer, did they eat the deer? Is it like here? We have a lot of people, ourselves included. Like we love deer season, and we're all about taking deer, and we do it to where we manage our properties to, we, they have nice antlers on them. So, hey, we might let this deer grow another year or two and let him breed some of our does. And then we might have another property where it's like, okay, I turn the boys loose and like, hey, knock them out. And, and if it's brown, it's down, but we don't waste anything and we utilize it,
It's not a legal requirement here.
Yeah.
And people do eat them, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, lots of people eat them, and but the densities here versus the population we've got in Australia, you can't eat them all, and that people might be offended by that sometimes.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but you physically just can't. Yeah. So there's plenty of operations where they just go in a pit, unfortunately. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. It's also like if we're doing this, for a reason, it's really inefficient to have to deal with the carcasses.
Yes.
So, a lot of times they're just left where they are. But, I know that might be confronting to people, but that's just the way it is.
What's the truth?
People,
that's the truth.
Yeah.
I used to be like that with the
Go.
wild hogs. I didn't want to waste anything. I was like, no, man. And we would drag every pig out. And then after so long, but at the same time, we didn't have very many hogs,
Yep.
So, say we killed, say we wound up with 100 for the year. Man, that was a lot. But we had enough friends and family and all that, or we'd use them for dog feed, whatever. Now, the population has increased a lot, and 100 ain't nothing. Like we knock out several hundred, and what do you do with all of them? Like
that's right.
So the carcass is more of a issue. So you need to have some. You can't process all of them because there's not enough people that want them. Not here.
So there's people in Australia that eat them. My professional advice is to not do that, and my other advice is to not feed them to dogs. Like we've known that pigs in Australia carry a lot of diseases that can affect people and dogs for a long time, but we're getting better at understanding how much is around. So the advice has kind of always been, take care and be careful if you're gutting a pig, wear gloves, that sort of stuff. Don't feed it to your dogs. But as the guy who sometimes, helps out doing the bleed, actually taking the bloods, and, I see the results, they come back to me as well as other members of the team. I say to everyone, my sons included, do not touch them unless you absolutely have to. Do not get blood on you. Do not get fluid on you. Particularly, don't do things like, gut pregnant sows, because that amniotic fluid's quite, can have quite a high disease load. So we've got leptospirosis, a couple of different forms of that in our pigs, in most of our pig populations. And as I said, we've gotten better at understanding that over the last few years as the tests have got better and we've done more testing. So that can make you quite sick. It's a common disease that dairymen used to get in the day because they have, cows urinating on them from, when they're down underneath them milking them.
Yes.
But so there's different forms of that in almost all of our feral pigs in Australia. And another one is brucellosis. So there's different forms of brucellosis. There's brucellosis, bovine brucellosis, which affects cattle, which we've eradicated in Australia. There's ovine, so sheep brucellosis, which is endemic, is in most sheep, in a lot of sheep populations in New South Wales. I shouldn't say all of them. And then brucellosis suis, which is a swine brucellosis. So it's in the feral pig population. If you get that, it can have really debilitating health effects. You can have really severe cold and flu symptoms for quite a long time, pretty intense fatigue. It can actually cause your testicles to swell to the size of like mandarins, which is one of the ways we get through to the young guys. It's like, do you want your balls the size of grapefruit? Well, don't, muck around with the pigs. So that then can be passed on to dogs, and it's quite common in dogs, pig hunting dogs in Australia, and it feels like it's becoming more common. I don't know whether that's true or not. It might be just that we're better connected now. But it used to be that if you took a dog to the vet and it had brucellosis suis, that it would be put down pretty much immediately, and that would then be reported. I think now, I'm not a vet, but I think now that there is a treatment where they castrate male dogs and they give them a really intense round of antibiotics. But I think you've got to have the right vet, because the vets don't like working on the dog, because there's a number of vets who have actually caught the disease themselves from dogs they've been treating.
Holy shit.
So it is pretty serious, and it's certainly something that's made us change our practices on our weekends, when we're hunting recreationally.
I could only imagine.
We don't touch them. Yep. Don't fool with them. Don't mess with them. Anything. Take a photo. Walk away.
Yeah.
We have gloves with us. We have hand sanitizer with us in a backpack, even if we're walking now. And it's not. We're not jumping at shadows. Like, it's actually there.
Yeah. It's 100%. We always heard that there's diseases and in areas that have high populations. They, like in the state of Georgia, we have the bay pen circuits, and they test the hogs very, very heavily.
Okay.
very
That's good.
heavily.
Yep.
So that way, if a dog comes in contact, with a hog that has brucellosis or whatever, well, number one, they should never be able to do that in a public setting because the hogs are tested. Where we're at, you never hear of anything with brucellosis or pseudo rabies in the state that we're in, as far as I know. And I try to keep up with it. I've seen one time I had a dog that had pseudo rabies. We got it from a place in Mississippi. This has been years and years ago, and I was told that it's mainly in the pockets like where people have these hogs that are in training pens or paid hunts, where the hogs stay in there all the time.
Yep.
And now, like I said, I'm not a vet. I'm not a biologist. I don't know all these things. So with what you told me right there with the 3 different types of brucellosis right there is enough to make me really, now I got to go research all this even more. Now I have to learn more.
Yeah. So as far as I know, the other ones don't really cross species, but when they might, I'm not sure. But the Suis one, the pig one, definitely will infect other species like dogs and humans. So that's the scary part. I've worked on the sheep one, from a disease point of view, and I know that it doesn't really cross species. But the pig ones have caused a lot of concern in certainly New South Wales and in southern Queensland as well. So it's something that we tell people, and I tell all the young pig hunters that I know. We're not trying to pull your leg. This is a real thing.
Yes.
And you need to take some care because we don't want you sick for no reason. That's just silly.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what other than lepto and brucellosis, what other diseases do you know offhand?
So there's testing for Q fever and things like that, but the one that we've got most recently, only the last few years in Australia, is Japanese encephalitis. And so that's carried by pigs, but not just pigs, right? It's carried by any kind of warm-blooded creatures. But it has been detected in feral pigs in Australia. And so that's one that can make you very sick. Encephalitis is swelling in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's carried by mosquitoes. So, I know there's some work in Queensland where they've detected it. And we think, we don't really know, but we think that that's a disease that's come more recently with migratory birds. But there's no real way of knowing that. We just know that it's here now, and it's only been here for a few years. It's mainly, my understanding is mainly in the tropics. But the one that we're kind of being prepared for now is the avian flu, and there have been pockets of that in Australia. And I know it's you've had it in the US as well. I think that's part of the reason the egg prices went up, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're preparing for that, and that's really difficult to prevent just because of migratory birds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're just swapping between countries all the time, right? Go from north to south and vice versa. So it's hard to keep it out, really. So that's the one that we're all kind of a bit scared of now. And if that gets a go on in wild populations, then I don't know, it's potentially carried by pigs as well, or a vector. I'm not too sure about that one, but that's the one that we're all talking about.
Okay. Well, that's I mean, that's something really good and informative that you can I bring to attention to a lot of people who don't pay attention to these things. I'm one of them. Like I said, I try to stay up to par on most things that are going to be general news. I don't study as deep as I should. Nathan, however, Nathan's going to get in there and study everything. And, and he lets me know. He's like, hey, you need to do this, or watch out for this, or whatever. And I'm thankful to have him. Not everybody has that. So, like I said, this is really, really helpful and informative. So, but now let's get on to the dogs. Let's get on to these black mouth curs. I know you don't really like them.
Yellow dogs.
Yeah, them old yellow dogs. Tell us how you got into them and what got. I want to know why. What brought you to? What brought you to that blackmouth cur?
Well, you've already talked to Baden. He's the motivation, I suppose, of the team, and I'm the brains. That's how I describe it. No, I don't know. He'll up me about that. No, we work pretty well together, but Look, it was initially an idea of mine to import some kind of breed. Like I'd always had dogs. I'd always loved hunting. But we were just using kind of whatever worked, right? Like, you'd get a good dog from someone, like you guys do as well, but get a good dog from someone that looked about right, and if it was a good dog, you'd breed it to someone else's good dog. And they were kind of all, back in the day, I had kind of wolfhound crosses or what we call staghound crosses with, bull terrier or boxer. I like a bit of boxer in a mixed up dog. I think it makes them, good drive and good size, good nose. English bull terrier was common as well, more so than pit bull. Like we like the English round nose ones. So I always had those types of dogs, and like I said, whatever worked. And went away. Actually moved to Queensland. I didn't have dogs for a little while, and I really missed it. And I thought I'd really like to do something a little bit unusual, but I'd kind of like to import a dog that we could keep as a type or keep pure. And thought about a whole heap of different ones, and the internet was really just getting going then. So this is about from 2002. We started thinking about it, and by about 2005, we kind of narrowed the list down a bit. Like first, I thought about plot hounds because, to my knowledge, that they're not in Australia yet, and the goal there was to get a plot hound that was, silent plot hound that was a little more catchy, a little more rough. We thought about Catahoula's, but there were other guys doing Catahoula's at the time, and to this day I know nothing about Catahoula's. I considered there's a line of Airedale that has a pretty smooth coat. We thought about those as well.
Yeah.
But we sort of kept coming back to yellow dogs, to blackmouth curs, because kind of that's what the guys had that we saw were regularly getting pigs, and guys that were just doing it for themselves, like guys who were just like, hey, look, I don't really sell these things, but here's just what we've always used, and they've always worked for us. And it's like, well, that strikes a chord with us because we do a similar thing, They're not breeding them, to sell necessarily. They're breeding them to keep them or when they need them, and that appealed to us as well. So, yeah, we just kept coming back to the yellow dogs. Back in the day, there was a forum called East Texas Hog Doggers. It was more active.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yep. So I learned a lot on there, and people were kind to me on there and sort of answered my dumb questions. And then, well, to be honest with you, Joe, what happened was 2005, my wife and I were going to the US, and we were going to catch up with some people down around Louisiana, and Cyclone Katrina hit. And the place just went dark. Like there was no communication in or out. Couldn't get on to anybody. And so I had a friend at the time in California. So we went over there and we hunted elk and mule deer and stuff. And then the original plan was to go down in the south and catch up and look at some dogs to import. But when it just went dark, like we couldn't do much else other than plan another trip. So we actually went moose hunting up in British Columbia with a friend. Well, reality was we dropped him off and he moose hunted and we just did the touristy stuff. So 2005 wasn't a bit of a bust. Like we had a great time, but came back and then it was one Easter. I think it was 2007 or 8 when the global financial crisis happened, and the Australian dollar and the American dollar were about par. And Baden and I were sitting around one Easter drinking beers, as you can imagine. And he sort of said, well, if we've talked about this for a while and you've been talking about it, if we don't do it now, we probably never will. So we locked in some of the transport sort of when the dollar was good, and it made it much more affordable for us. So we could bring more dogs in because it is, excuse me, mate, it is, the costs are prohibitive. Like it's very expensive, and it's probably tripled since we did it. So, okay. I mean, Baden's told the story about Baden worked with Randy Wright and Dave Toms, and Dave Toms was just awesome to us. So he couldn't have been nicer, and he couldn't have done more. And it was great to get back to meet him there, this year. But he was so generous to us. He looked after the dogs for us. The disease requirements are really difficult to deal with. So you basically buy the pup before it's born. And then the minimum requirement then was that it had to have a rabies vaccination and then a rabies test 3 months after the vaccination. And then the clock started ticking when you got the tests back from that rabies test. And then the tidal level had to be above a certain level. And then 3 months from then, the pup was eligible for export. So basically you had to buy a pup off somebody, then take it to the vet several times, and then they had to keep it for you for 3 months. And David was kind enough to do that for us with 4 dogs, which is amazing.
Oh yeah.
And then from then, to be honest, it's just about applying money to the situation, right? Like there's people who will do it for you, and people import dogs all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then back in those days, that was 2011. September 2011. So they landed in Sydney, and they went into quarantine for a month in Sydney. Now they have to go through Melbourne, and I don't know if it's still a month. I'm not sure about that, but I remember turning up to the quarantine facility in Sydney, and the quarantine people who were looking after the dogs said, "Good luck with these things. They are nuts." I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "We can't keep bedding in with them. They're just so active, and they're bored. They want something to do." And I thought, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And so we grabbed him and trundled off. Like David had been really great to us, but it was pretty hard on those dogs. Like they were pretty shy for a while. They're only young. They're only sort of 11, 12 months old, all 4 of them. And it took probably a year to get much of a handle on them, and to get them to settle in. They were very instinctive when they got here. We'd say a little bit dingo-ish, like a bit shy. One of the things I noticed that they do constantly is if you've got something, they jump up on top of it to look out over. They had to be up on top of things, which I'd never seen before in a dog. And they all did that. But then within kind of 3 weeks, I think 2 weeks of me having them here, I packaged 3 of them up, and I took them up to Dave, and he was living, on a pretty remote station back then. And I took 3 up, and I kept one here. I kept a female we called Rose, and she was pregnant when she came over, and she had that first litter that Baden talks about, the happy dog from.
Mm-hmm.
So she had 3 pups, and unfortunately, two of them were culls, and one was an absolute cracker, and that was a setback. Knowing a little more now, that one of those pups, the female, we might have been able to handle, but she was extremely shy, and no disrespect to any of the black-mouthed cur guys out there, but it seems to be a bit of a thing you get now and then with those tightly bred dogs. But she was a really intensely shy, and we could kind of put up with that. She'd work really well, but if there was a stranger around, or if I made a loud noise when I was about to load her up on the truck, she would just hide on you. And then I don't know if people have ever seen this, but she actually didn't like other bitches having pups, and she'd search them out to try and remove them from the population, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so she went bye-bye.
Yeah, that's
which was a setback. Absolutely was a major setback, because that was kind of one of our plans for an outcross, that litter. But it worked out in the end. Happy has been foundational for us. And most of what we've got now is all heavily happy bred, or happy or Rose. And so we like them. I really like them. I've enjoyed doing it. It's been a real highlight the last few years. It's a distraction other than work, even though you're sort of doing similar stuff in a way. It's really not work related for me, and I can get out and, like I said before, walk the hills with the sons and have a great time. Couple of things I like about them, they're pretty smart, and you can manipulate them when they're young for them to be what you want. Guys say to me, "Well, I want a dog that kind of, in Australia, particularly Queenslanders will say, I want a dog that hangs. I don't want a dog that's too soft." So we'll work it with lugging dogs. It'll be hard. And if you're working with a loose bailing dog, generally they're looser. Mm. So you can do a bit of that yourself. If you imprint them the first few times you hunt them, like, between sort of 6 months and maybe even early, but 6 months and 12 months old, that's what they'll be. So that's good. They have plenty of hunt for us, sometimes too much. They'll stay that sort of 300, 400 metres out, but also smart enough to know if there's not much around. A lot of my dogs hunt the same country pretty often, and you'll see them go to that spot. You'll see them go to a hole in the fence that they know, and they'll have a sniff and go, "Yeah, no, not today." Mm-hmm. And and then it's up to me to package them up and take them somewhere and put them where there's some pigs, right? So heaps of hunt for us. One thing that they do better than any dog I've ever seen is what you guys call relay.
Yes.
Or we call that running on. And the term running on comes from when you had what you guys call running catch dogs. If you had someone who was fit enough to keep up with the dogs, they would, if the dogs caught a pig, they would grab one of those dogs and run on with it and kind of hold it, by the collar until they got away from the caught pig enough to let it go on the next pig.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So these dogs, you don't have to do that. They will do it naturally.
Mm-hmm.
If you're shooting over them, I shoot big boars mainly. I don't have a catch dog. If you shoot and there's another pig there, those dogs are smoke. They're gone. I had old Rose, the original bitch. She was the best I'd ever seen. She would relay when another dog got there. And you knew that, from the tracker, right? You can see that she's got one. And then, a pup turns up and she's gone again. It's like, shit, we're in for a long day here.
Yeah, she's ready to go.
I used to hunt a place to the south of here, and it's steep. Like, it's open country, but prettiest country you'll ever see, but generally too steep for a quad bike anywhere. There's bits of it you can drive, but it's sort of rolling open hills, a little bit like some of that grass country in New Zealand, but not New Zealand steep. But anyway, one morning I had Rose, who was 2.5-year-old, and a bitch pup that was 10 months old, and I only had two dogs at that stage. And one morning they got 22 pigs in one paddock. Old Rose caught 4 out of a mob, because you can sort of see the mobs from a bit of a distance. She caught 4 out of a mob 3 times that morning, and I had a mate with me, and he dived on her at one point and took his belt off and put his belt through a collar and said, "We're going back to the truck. I'm sick of this thing." and I remember we walked so many hills. Both of my big toenails fell off a couple of days later.
Holy shit!
Yeah, just from walking downhill and uphill. But yeah, she was remarkable. She was had the most drive of any dog I've ever seen.
Wow.
So we like them. Now it's time for us to broaden it out a little bit. I mean, that's why we're over at Earl's. One of the reasons we're at Earl's, and meeting people. But we like them. I mean, there's other guys doing it now, but most of what's in Australia is related to that initial import we did in 2011. Weirdly, one of the ways you see that is a purple birthmark on their tongue. I've got an old dog here that throws that in his pups, and a guy, Baden sent a pup down to me just to hold for a couple of days that a guy bought. It was close to me, and he turned up and he had one from someone that I didn't know, but it would have been related to ours. And that dog's entire tongue was purple, which I hadn't seen before. So that's a bit of a tell for us. And anything that leaves our yard, though, we tattoo in the ear. So we keep a breed database that we can look back on. But then when I haven't bred dogs for a while, a few years. I've just been pretty busy. I've only got all males now. I've got one old original male that's 10 years old, and he's about to retire. If he barks too much in the morning, sometimes I take him with me. And then I've got one of his sons and one of his grandsons, and they're the 2 main dogs that I hunt nowadays. Yeah, but really enjoy it. Like
that's
I like doing it.
awesome.
They suit me and what I do. Yeah. And maybe one of my boys will pick it up in the future. I'm not sure. That's really up to them. But certainly if they want to, it's here for them to take on. But there's other guys like it, and I don't know a lot of them, but there might be 8 or 10 other people breeding blackmouth curs. There was another import done a couple of years after us by a guy at the Gold Coast, and he's a nice fella, and he uses one of our dogs as a breeder into his line now. And he's a nice guy, Jonathan. But I haven't seen those dogs, and I can't really comment on them. And there was another one done into Queensland, and Baden's had some contact with that person and was able to get a pup out of that litter that they call Rogue, I think. And Baden's bred that dog to some of his bitches, and he's got a pretty good young female up there now. He calls Mischief, and she's got that level of intensity that you just go, wow, like you need to be hunting her 3 or 4 nights a week. It used to be a saying, you put 1 foot through their collar, before lunch, and then you swap legs after lunch. So she just goes all day, every day, and leaves the other dogs behind pretty well. But yeah, she's outstanding. So yeah, things are looking good for blackmouth curs.
Yeah, that's having dogs like that. That's what got me to the blackmouth cur as well. I was looking for something, and at the time I wanted the rough dogs. I wanted them to hang. And I got a couple from different lines, and they didn't suit what I wanted. So I kind of I'm not going to say I had a bad taste in my mouth over it, but it was just like, I wasn't real sure. But then I got a good one, and it was like daylight and dark. Like you said, this dog, he did whatever you want him to do. And he just turned out to be phenomenal. Well, I lost him in a bad deal. We got on some bad boars. We got on a couple of them, and he got cut down. And this is not something that, like it's the reality of what we do. But he held on until he closed his eyes and took his last breath.
Well,
and I knew then, I was like, and that night right then I started looking. I said, I'm going to find what I want. And I did. It was a couple of years, but now I've got what I like, and it's working out really good. And like you said, the drive that they have, the intensity of it. I've got a pair from Rusty, and they really hunt out. They're still young, 8-9 months old, maybe. And I mean, they'll go out and hunt really good. They bay really good. But there's times where I know if I'd have put them with a rougher set of dogs, they would have been just catching. So I made sure to keep them with a softer type dog, even though these dogs are hard. I don't want them to get too rough because, like I said, I've got to where I'm a little older now, and I like to listen to the dogs bay. And then we ease in there.
Walking rather than running. Yeah.
Yes. Now, used to, that was the thing. It was like we were running all the time. And now I tell everybody, I'm like, hey, we walk into the bay and then we run to the catch. Like if we turn a catch dog loose, then we run. But other than that, like we just sit and, we just listen to them bay. And I'm really a fan of it. But we do have a couple of Catahoulas that are really, really good too. So it's like, I guess it's to each his own and whatever they want. We actually did some F1 crosses with the Catahoula and the blackmouth cur to see how they do. That's still open, but
I've had to put, cut what you guys call cut vests on mine out of necessity.
Yes.
On their own, they'll bay pretty good, but together there's two young dogs and they live together as well. They're good mates. They'll catch most pigs by the ears, which is not great. We hunt some pretty rough country, and they're actually last couple of hunts they've started to stand back a little bit and bay, which has been really good. But in general, like the dogs that say Rusty had and the dogs that the guys that we saw in Arkansas, like they hunt, like they're phenomenal hunters, but they're a lot looser than what we have.
Yes.
Yeah, they bay really wide, but yeah, they got great noses and heaps of drive, but really wide. And yeah, so that was the point of difference. The other thing that I found very interesting and I liked and enjoyed watching was like some of those catch dogs. Like it is culturally it's quite different the way that you use them. And those dogs were perfectly well behaved. Like they were absolutely chill as. But the one difference that I noticed was, your dogs are really well behaved, like until you let them go.
Mm-hmm.
But were hard. This is just a cultural difference. It's not a criticism, but hard to get off. Like I've had what you guys call lugging dogs or catch dogs for years, and we spend a lot of time when they're pups teaching them to let go when you tell them.
I do that myself.
You do that? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, I don't want to have to.
That was a bit of a difference. Yeah. So, we were big on that. And the other thing that we used to try and do is with our running catch dogs is try and get them to where they knew where the pointy end was and get them to work, grab an ear and then work along the side of the pig a bit. You can't always do that. And some never learn. But we used to think, I don't know whether it's true, but we used to think the things with a bit of deerhound in them were generally, or boxer deerhound sort of thing, were a little better at learning that. And I don't know whether that's true, but that was something that we used to try and do because back in the day we didn't actually run any kind of breastplates or cut gear at all, only other than a neck collar.
Yes.
So that was important to us that they weren't getting hurt. Yeah.
Like you said, I think a lot of it's the cultural side of it.
Yeah.
It's and I agree with you. These guys, they're not doing anything wrong. That's just the way they do it.
You there?
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I agree. They're not doing anything wrong. It's just different. So when I first started hunting, that's kind of the style that was going on. Walk in with the bulldogs, turn them loose. They go in there and catch. And I was used to the dogs, kind of dragging you around. And you had to get a break stick and break them off. And then they're over there and they're fighting and acting crazy. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this shit. I'm not doing it. And so I made sure I had a good handle on my bulldogs. And so from there, I went to when the hogs just kept running all the time. I noticed that a lot of times if I turned my bulldog loose, once we got there, if I didn't clip it back to a tree or something, well, it would take off and it would go find a pig on its own. So I just started using some of my bulldogs. Well, then I evolved into like, okay, well, let's see. So I started looking at a lot of stuff you guys do.
Yep.
That's when I got into the bull terriers, the wolf hounds, the stag hounds, the deer hounds, Saluki, Whippet, greyhound crosses. Started doing bird, English pointer crossed with a pit, crossed back to a bull terrier, or it might be vice versa, 3 or 4 different ways. And those dogs would put the meat on the ground, and then as soon as we got there, we got our hands on the pigs, we tell them get off of it. And we started doing that from the time they were little. We would let them know that once we got there, hey, you can go on and do something else. And they would relay, they would roll out.
Yep.
And that's the way I like to hunt the running catch dogs.
Similar here.
And we still do the same thing. Like our dogs, we don't have the best dogs. I can guarantee you that. But when we go in with a catch dog, once we go in and they get caught, they just sit down and wait on us to get done. And that's it. I'm not listening to all that shit. So
have you still got anything with wolfhound or staghound in it?
Yeah, I've got a 3/4 wolfhound, quarter deerhound out here right now.
Yeah, right.
I've got an Airedale. She's a nice female, and actually it's a friend of mine's. He sent her to me. We're breeding her up, and I've got some bull terrier Airedale crosses, back to a Yog terrier. Then I've got a wire hair pointer crossed back to a pit bull. He's a really, really nice dog. He looks kind of like a shaggy bull Arab, if you will. Phenomenal dog.
That's turn him loose.
Yeah. That's what I like to run a lot of times. When we go to a place where there's a lot of pigs, that's what I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring the run and catch dogs. I love the bay dogs. And when we go on big hunts, if we're taking somebody out to hunt with us, we want it to be an enjoyable deal. We take them out, we turn the bay dogs loose. They go out and they strike, find one. If their pigs are there, we'll find one maybe. And they'll bay it and we can walk down in there. There's no big rush usually. And they can see the full process of it. But if I got to go dispatch a bunch of pigs, I got to take the rough dogs. And then I have I got one named Jughead. He's a full-blooded blackmouth cur, and he is as rough as it gets. Like, he thinks he's a bulldog. And he's really coming in. He's settling in. He's a 3-year-old dog now, and he still acts like a puppy. But when you turn him loose, he's going to hammer.
How do you find the Airedales?
I just got a couple of pretty good connections that I've had over the years. Years and years ago, we wanted something a little bit. We used a lot of the Yog terriers, the little Jags. They were phenomenal dogs, but they were too small. And so we wanted something a little bigger, and we seen the Hyde Terrier, which is Airedale and Yog Terrier and Bull Terrier mix. And then
Yep.
later on, they incorporated a little bit of Irish Terrier. And now they actually use some Milano in them as well to
Yep.
put some size. And I've got some of those from, I think they're out of Lithuanian blood and shipped in from Germany.
Right. Yep.
Josh Neff.
I don't know anyone. I know one or two guys had a little bit of Airedale in their dogs, but I think it's sort of bred out now. I could be wrong about that. But
I really like the
line
good Airedale. A good one is hard to beat.
Yeah, I've got a mate in New Zealand who liked them as well, but said they were very, very hard-headed, very strong-willed, and kind of hard to get around. But he liked them. The Kiwis put a bit of whippet into their dogs, and the main reason I can work out is they, in that really thick, steep country and all that, there's a weed over there called gorse, which and the pigs get in that, and they're hard to stop, and so they use the greyhound or the whippet crosses because they're fast, but they also bite the pig on the butt and just sit them down and stop them running. And I know of greyhound Airedales and stuff in New Zealand as well. So there's a few of them over there. But I've always been interested in Airedales.
Yeah, the ones that I had got them from an older gentleman in North Alabama years ago. The very first ones I got from the guys that I hunted with, which was Aaron Schinkel and Clay Austin and that group of fellas there. And they wound up acquiring a few of them. And then I wound up getting more after the fact. I've had them I had a couple from other countries that were shipped in, and they were really good dogs. But like you said, they were hard-headed. They had a lot of drive, a ton of drive, but they didn't have, I like a dog that can work out a problem. And I know that might sound crazy for most people, but like I like a dog that thinks. And the dogs, the Airedales that I wound up getting, the ones that I really established everything on, they were on the bigger side. They were not the dog show lines. And they all worked. Every one that I ever owned worked well. And like I said, they would, you could almost sit and watch those dogs sit and think, if you know what I mean. You look at him and you're like, this dog is working this problem out. And once we crossed those into the program that we had, we had a dog named King, and he was a true one-out dog, could handle any size. And he was going on 10 years old when we wound up losing him. And that blackmouth cur I was talking about, Charlie, we lost him on the same night. It was just a really, really bad scenario. But he would catch the hog. And there were times I would sit and watch him. He would go in straight on at the pig and stop right before he got there. And he might circle around behind him and come up from the side on the flank and grab him on the back side of the jaw and just tuck his body right against the pig's body and just sit there. And that's what I like.
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever tried? Well, I'll go back a step. The very traditional, so some of the first pig dogs ever used here were straight cross English Bull Terrier with cattle dogs. And if you could get them when you crossed them, they'd use the taller cattle dogs, like the stumpy-tailed ones. Yeah, if they could. But have you ever tried anything like that, or never, even with a bit of boxer?
Never have. I have crossed the Bull Terrier over a couple of different things, and I really liked it. But I had a friend of mine. He works cattle, and he was trying to get me to cross. And I've still got a couple of Bull Terriers. He was trying to get me to cross those dogs into his Kelpies. And that's what he told me. He was like, look, he said, I got one female. She's really, really rough. He said, and I think if you breed her, we could use them for cattle dogs or hog dogs or whatever. And we just never did it. But I've often wondered what that would have done.
It's a thing people do here. Even maybe more so, Baden would know more about this than me, but maybe more so in Queensland, where they've got a lot of rough cattle, like taller cattle, like Brahmins. And, they'll put a little bit of Bull Terrier in, or even sometimes a bit of boxer into their working collies. So to make them a bit tougher or a little more bite. But, it's interesting. But Yeah, that's the original one that sort of, my dad's generation had, English Bull Terrier, cattle dog sort of crosses. Yeah, so
when I first got into the
pretty
bull
popular here.
terriers, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, some of those English bullies have got phenomenal noses too.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. When I first got into them, I had no idea that they wanted to hunt that much. I mean, you can take and turn them loose by themselves, and they go.
Yep.
But now, when I first really started messing with them, I had a bunch of guys that had the American Pit Bull Terriers, which that's originally what I was raised doing. And I mean generational. And I still have American Pit Bull Terriers. But I wanted something that wasn't so hot. I was like, I want something that can, and those guys were like, man, those Bull Terriers, they ain't shit. They ain't got no mouth on them. They don't bite, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know which ones you seen. I said, but I promise you, the ones I got will. And first one I ever had was shipped in from Ireland. And he was a big meathead. He was huge. And he was not athletic at all. But I promise you, you could have ran him over with a Mack truck, and he would have just kept going. He had no reverse, and he just went forward. So we bred him in, and there were several. I look back on it now, and I probably wouldn't have bred him into the program then, if I had him now. But because of the tenacity and the durability of the dog, I was like, his bone structure, his bones were huge. Yeah. I said, man, I like that. And then I wound up getting.
They used to talk about a couple of different types of English Bull Terrier. What they call a miniature now used to be called the bull type.
Yeah.
And then there was a middle of the road type, and then there was a Dalmatian type, which was a taller, more athletic English bully. And you just don't see those anymore.
No,
and I think that there'd be some value in finding one of those if you could. But I mean, people try and recreate them, put a bit of greyhound in them or something like that. But they're interesting dogs. Yeah. Hey, before I go,
yes, sir.
Maybe what about? Do you want me to tell a blackmouth curse story?
Yes, we definitely want that.
Well, I was thinking about some stories I could tell you. I know Baden told you a couple, and there's probably a few we can't. But anyway,
well, I was fixing to say, make sure Baden has his clothes on when we talk about these now, because you know how.
Well, he made me promise I wouldn't tell that story.
Okay. Yeah,
tell us a good one. Wild trip, but I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that one at Uncle Earl's in 2027.
Okay.
So the biggest boar I've ever caught, I reckon, was with the blackmouth curs a few years ago. It was one Easter, and a mate in central Queensland I hadn't seen for a while, and his kids were sort of roughly the same age as my boys, and he said, "Well, come up. I've got this really remote cattle station that we can hunt. There's not a lot of pigs there, but what there's pretty big, but it's quite pretty. It's a nice four-wheel drive in there, and we might find the occasional pig. There's some clean skin cattle in there as well if you want to do that." But so we left his place, and it was about 120 kilometre drive in, and it was sort of first and second gear all the way. Like it was sort of a full day to do 120 kilometres.
Wow.
And we get in, and there's a beautiful big, like an amphitheatre, like a big box. And then there's a little musterer's hut at the bottom where, we were staying, and it was Easter, there was Easter eggs and stuff, and we had a great time, and the kids were just, playing. And he said, one afternoon, he said, let's go for a bit of a pig hunt. He said, I think there's a wallow up here on the side of the road. And he didn't own any dogs at that stage, and I had 4. I had Rose was sort of 3-year-old. I had Holly, they're all females. Holly was about 18 months old. And I had 2 pups out of Rose that were about 10 months old. They were Blackie and Nibbles, I think the name was. Anyway, so he said, he just parked up the truck, and he said, there's a wallow in there, I think about 50 metres in. And I got in there, and the dogs just took off, like just hit a scent, and they were gone, floated, we would say. And I went, okay, it's on here. And it was sort of about starting to get a bit late. I got in about 500 metres and thought, I'm going to have to go back for a headlamp. So I jogged back to the truck and then started following the dogs on the tracker. And this is a few years ago now, and I was a lot fitter then than I am now. Like I used to jog a fair bit, sort of 40, 50 Ks a week, so I could keep up a lot better. But anyway, so they went about 1 kilometre one way, went up over a ridge, and then did a big U-turn and come back towards the truck. And across the road we went in on. I thought, this is getting pretty serious. This must be a decent one. And then they hit this hill, and the hill was huge, like this big, long, rocky hill. And I've been going for about maybe an hour, and I heard him hit the pig. Like the sound carried downhill pretty well, just because of the way the wind was blowing. And I heard him hit it, and I went, "Oh, that's not good." It sounded like it had a grizzly bear, like they were all bailing and that big, noisy rolling bale, And so anyway, by this time it's just getting dark, and so it struggled uphill about 700 or 800 meters, something like that, and then it flattened out, and I went again, and I finally got up to where they had it bailed, and yeah, he was a monster, and I had then, and I still have it now, a 357 Magnum rifle that I've used forever, and it's good. We like it. It puts them down good, and it's if you won't shoot through a pig into a dog, that sort of thing. Anyway, I was puffing pretty hard, and sort of had a quick shot just into his armpit just to stop him, and that normally kills him pretty good. And he just shrugged it off. Nothing happened, and I went, "Oops, okay, this is not good." So he's taken off again, and the dogs have gone another 80, 100 meters and pulled him up again. And old Rose was about as honest as they come, and she saw me there, and she grabbed the pig by the ear, like no collar on or nothing, grabbed this pig by the ear, and I thought, okay, I'll get this guy. And I wrapped his tail in the left hand, and I remember he had a really long tail, and the pig was that big and that long. He actually turned on his tail and nearly bit me, which I've never seen to this day. Like normally they just can't do that.
Yeah.
He was a big, long guy, and luckily I had my rifle in the right hand, and I just poked it in his ribs and pulled the trigger, and it sort of shocked him a bit and took a bit of the wind out of his sails. And but he pulled out of my hand, and away he went. And the third time, the dogs are getting sick of it by then. They're going, hurry up, kill this bloody thing, will you? We've been chasing it for 2 hours. And they're sort of looking at me, and I took my time. I knew I didn't have many bullets left, and took my time and put one beside his eye, and that was the end of him. And he was big. He was long and wide, and genetically in that valley, I think they're just a little bit different. I think they probably come from a more domestic sort of background, but he was huge. Wow. Anyway, it was all I could do just to move him a little bit out of the rocks where he was to get a decent photo. So anyway, I started walking back downhill to where I could see my mate way off in the distance. I could see the lights of his truck. I thought, good on him, he's positioned the truck in a way that I can see the lights to walk back down. And the dogs needed a drink. That was the main sort of focus. They were fine, but they needed a drink pretty bad. And I walked back down and found a bit of water, and then the next sort of 500 or 600 metres out, I could see his lights. And I got to the truck, and he said, "Well, mate, the good news is when you were gone, I went back to the hut and I got a 6-pack of beer, but the bad news is you were so long I drank them all."
Shit. Oh, man.
And he's never let me forget it. Yeah, his name's Nathan too, so g'day, Nathan. Thanks, mate.
Drank all the damn beer. My God. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but that was the biggest pig I've ever got. Yeah.
What do you reckon you weigh?
Well, I judge them by what they would weigh when we sell them for meat, because that's how we measured them with the guts out. But with his guts out, he would have had to have been 130 kilos.
Oh, wow.
Whatever that is, but it was the country too, right? It was just like almost vertical in places and dark, and
so that'd be
miles
like
from home.
275 here, something like that.
I suppose, yeah.
That's a big hog. Which I mean,
it's certainly big, mate.
Yeah, that's thick. That's what I was going to ask too about the size of you guys of the hogs there. I mean, do they vary from location to location? Because here,
definitely do.
They do. Yeah. Okay, because in the mountains. Yeah. In the higher country, the hogs tend to have a bigger body, but not as big teeth.
Yeah.
And then, like you get closer to the flatland agriculture, the coast, especially like the coastal areas, they'll have really, really big teeth, and be a small pig. It might be 120 pounds, 150 pounds, which would be 60 to 70 kilos.
Yep.
And they'll have 3 or 4 inch teeth, which is huge.
Yep.
Which is huge here. I mean, for us.
Yeah. We get that. So in some of that's environmental. Yeah. So in grain growing areas where they've got good feed year round, they'll grow quickly and grow sort of smallish teeth because they're only young. We age a lot of pigs when we blood sample them now. Okay. Those birds are not making too much of a noise, are they?
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. And so grain growing areas, they grow quickly, and so the age structure is a bit different. Like anything older than about 5 is really rare. Like 90% of pigs will be younger than 5. So as we go further west, we see like smaller pigs because there's not as much food. And on softer, what we call softer country, so black soil country, they tend to have bigger teeth. And I think they don't wear down as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But, we get that. So size difference, we definitely get tusks, teeth, probably bigger in western areas. So Burke, places like that, if you've heard of Burke. We get colour variations as well. So you'll get little pockets where you get a particular colour. Like we've got some just west of where I'm in now at home. There's some sort of bluish ones with a stripy tinge through them.
Yeah.
If you go up where Baden is, most of his sort of white feet or 4 white feet and a white blaze down their forehead. A little like a Berkshire kind of coloration.
Yes.
Where I am here, mainly black. Parts of Western will have a lot of spotted pigs, black and white ones, and then other areas you'll get sort of a reddish colour as well. But and it varies. I don't know, from a work point of view, it doesn't make any difference. It's always interesting to get a few different coloured ones, but I think size is mainly environmental.
Okay.
The place I have seen them that they look completely different. To me, to local pigs, is sort of Northern Territory. So a longer pig there with their ears kind of fall down over their eyes, a little more like a domestic in some places.
Yes.
So that was always interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. We go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to say I just was asked to go to Tasmania to an island called Flinders Island, and the pigs down there they think came off a shipwreck, a Chinese shipwreck called the Fu Chow or something like that. I might have that wrong. But anyway, those pigs did look a little different, but just a bit hairier. And that could be just environmental too. They've evolved to have a bit more hair because it's cold down there all the time. But they are a little different, long tails, kind of black and white coloration. That was interesting as well, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to several people, and that's one of the things that we always kind of compare our thoughts on is why hogs have bigger tusk in certain soils, in certain areas, and and that's like it's like, man, a lot of places that have real sandy soil seems like the hogs have bigger teeth, longer teeth, maybe not the circumference, but the length. And then you get to the agriculture areas, or like you said, where hogs can really eat and put on weight. There'll be a much bigger body and smaller teeth. And that's kind of what we run into. And in the mountains where it's really, really rough, rocky bluffs and things like that, a lot of the hogs, they won't even have tusks because they're broke off, or the ones that they had are broke anyway, should I say. And it's just, like you said, I think it's, you hit it dead on the head right there. It's just all environmental. Yeah,
I think so. Yep.
Now, on the aging process, what's the best way to do that?
So there's by tooth eruption, by molar eruption.
Mm-hmm.
So there's if you Google that, I mean, there's good guides online. There's a good one from New Zealand that I've seen that sets it out quite easily. Yeah. So we can tell them to about 48 months with some precision. Other than that, we'll really just say, look, it's greater than 48 months. And then there's a bit of subjection about it as well after that. But by and large, everything's sort of less than 5 years old. Anything older than 5, certainly in Australia, is really rare.
Okay.
Yeah. But have a look online. It's something you can teach yourself, pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's something good right there to know that. Because I've looked at certain things on how to age them, and we keep the bottom jaws all the time. A lot of people will keep the whole skull for like a trophy or whatever.
Yeah.
I never really got into doing the trophy part. I just did it as a comparison. If I go to another state and I catch a hog there, I definitely want to bring the bottom jaw set back to compare what it looks like to ours, to where we're at. Yep. And I have done full skulls where I've set them side by side, and you can see a difference in geographical locations, no doubt, 100%. Some of them look, you can look at it, and I've got domestic hogs that I've kept their skulls and compare them to some of the feral hogs or wild hogs, whatever. And some of those look like they're more domestic. You know what I mean? It's like you look at this hog and it's like you can tell this hog based off of looking at the domestic skull. You can tell that it has a lot. And we call them blooded. Yeah. We call them blooded hogs here, which means that they have domestic blood in them.
Yeah, okay.
You know, right. Because at one point in time here, every homestead or little farm, they had their own hogs, and they would just turn them loose in the woods. Yep. And you know, and every year you would go mark your piglets, you pull them up, you cut your boars and all that we, you know, raised them for food. I don't know if you guys ever did that there, but that's the way it started here.
Yep. I certainly know of an area that I hunt, and there's a saddleback influence, and the pigs have got a white splash over their shoulder.
Oh yeah,
and we know where those come from. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
A little up the road. Yeah, it's just what you were talking about. Yeah.
Well, Troy, I know you got to get to work. It's early in the morning there. I won't hold you up any longer.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you doing this. Good. It's very,
I've enjoyed it, mate. Well, hopefully we see you at Earl's 2027.
Oh yeah, we'll be there. If we can work it all out, maybe if we can work it out, we've got a piece of land there that's not very far from Uncle Earl's. A friend of ours has, and we might be able to put a hunt while we're all there, and we can hunt close to them. Mate. Yeah. I think it'd be great, especially like one of the nights like we had, you know, with some of that great rum that you guys had. That's the best rum in the world, and then some of that moonshine. Like we could drink some of that and go run dogs.
Tell Rodney to get a supply going. His was the best. That was good. That lemon one.
That's one. Yeah, Nate made that.
Actually, Nate.
Yeah. No, Rodney had the jar, but Nathan's the one that actually had that. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well done, Nate.
You know,
that was good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's still here and there around where we live at. You know, you can find it. Some people just, you know, they have it and they just give you a little jar here and there and be like, hey, try this. And I don't know. It's good stuff.
We had an awesome time. It was great meeting everyone, and everyone was so friendly, and it was fantastic. Now we're looking forward to coming back in 2027. Hopefully we'll have a few more people with us, and hopefully we'll bring some guys back who are a bit younger than us who can really party. They'll show you how it's done.
Oh, shit. They can show them. They're not showing me shit. I'm going to sleep. Oh, Troy, I appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Joey.
All right, man. You be good, and we'll see you.
Mate.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See if I can do this thing here. All right. So that's the man right there. He has some really nice dogs. Hoping he gets to bring one or two back when him and Baden, when they come for 2027 to Uncle Earl's, hoping they can bring one. Maybe we can all get together and hunt and do it like we were just talking about. So, but there's a lot of good information in this. He does a lot of work, and that's what he does every day, is deals with feral hogs on a large scale, much larger than what any of us here deal with. Like we was talking about a pig brig earlier. I think they had 85 in that trap. 85. I mean, 20 or 25 is a big catch for us anywhere, but 85, wow, it's a lot. So. Hey guys, we're going to keep this thing moving on. Going to keep on pushing to the top. Thank y'all. We appreciate it. I know y'all hear the same shit every time, every episode and all that, but like we're growing. As you can see, like we've got people from other countries that are joining us now, coming on as guests. We've got to meet these people. We've got to actually physically meet these people, and they're great folks. We're expanding, and we're trying to give hog hunters and people that run dogs, just in general, houndsmen and houndswomen, a good name, a better name than that they've had in the past in history. And it's nothing that anyone has really done. We have just been labeled a lot of these things, and we're not. I mean, the unity that we have, it's the camaraderie. We're a big family. Now, true enough, there's always some that's in every group. There's always one or two here and there. But the larger picture is the 99% of us that stick together and that have the same goals and have the same focus in life with these dogs and the hunting and the conservation that we do. And so remember one thing. You cannot tear down your fellow man to build yourself up. That's not how construction works. And so if you're building yourself a temple, you have to remember that a good foundation is where you start. And with a good foundation, you all know what I mean. So you have to have it inside, and you have to be a good person, and you have to spout and spew good things in life. Positive things in life. Negativity is never going to get us anywhere. So anytime that you can offer a helping hand, true enough, you're going to get burned. It's going to happen. But anytime that you're able to do it and you feel comfortable doing it, do it. Be open. Be accessible. So with that being said, we really appreciate it. And until the next one, we will see y'all.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. If there's anything or anyone you'd like to hear on the podcast, or if you'd like to come hunt with us, don't hesitate to contact us at dixiedoggers01@gmail.com.